Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Grayzone. Max Blumenthal here with Aaron Mate. And this has been I think, a historically pivotal week. So we're going to discuss everything that took place at Davos, what's happening in Iran, the upheavals in northeast Syria, and what else do we got? What's happening back in Washington is not as interesting as actually what happened. Everything pretty much happened in Davos as Trump set out his agenda for the so-called Board of Peace. Aaron, you have any plans for the snowstorm?
No, I do not. No,
so you're just going to be holed up in
I'm going to
New
be
York
holed
City?
up. Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
hunkering down. We got the storm is coming, as QAnon says, but it's actually a real storm. And I don't know. Have you checked your social credit score on Twitter X before we get started?
I didn't, but I hear that so the algorithm code was cracked, and so you can see whether or not you're being suppressed by Twitter and why.
Yeah, I'll send you a link so
Okay.
you can do it. I bet you it's similar to mine. But just to share my social credit score, I think it's like -70. And by the way, everybody's complimenting your new studio setup.
Thank you, everyone. It's coming along. It's coming along.
Yeah, I like the shelves. They look very similar to these.
Yeah.
Is it the IKEA Kallax?
Well, I mean, if it were, I wouldn't be promoting a brand on here, but it's not. It's custom made by my friend Declan. So thank you, Declan, for building this. And yeah, no.
Props to Declan.
Yes.
I have a partnership agreement with the Swedish government and IKEA to promote that. But here's my social credit score on. So for those of you who don't know,
wow.
You can look up your how. And I actually believe this is real. You can see how algorithmically suppressed or boosted you are on Twitter. And I just went into Grok. There's a thread of others doing this. And I wrote, do the same for Max Blumenthal. You can look up your semantic contextual scoring. And it says that I'm classified for borderline hate and harassment, anti-Zionist, borderline anti-Semitic tropes, confidence moderate, severity moderate, and I'm targeting protected categories according to Twitter. Ethnicity Jewish, secondary implied. So when I say Zionist, Twitter's algorithm understands that to be secondary or implied targeting of the protected minority of Jews. And I don't target the religion of Judaism low, I guess, so maybe I'm not so self-hating. Conspiracy amplification, Israeli Mossad influence, lobbying. So if you talk about the Israel lobby or the Mossad being active anywhere, you're amplifying conspiracy, and you're not supposed to criticize pro-Israel figures and policies, apparently. Terms like genocidal Israeli regime, apartheid Israel, Zionist lobby control, and so on. Or strong language framing Israeli action society collectively, like Jewish Israeli majority. So if I talk about polls where the majority of Jewish Israelis support decimating Gaza, that lowers my reach on Twitter. And Zionist supremacist, you're not allowed to say. My bio is neutral. I post a lot. Intense replies. I guess this all works against me. So deboost severity is moderate in polarized discussions. And here's my social credit score. Hidden reputation score estimated moderately reduced, -40% to -55%. I believe others like Norman Finkelstein are -70%. Our colleague Wyatt Reed is -80%. and no violent incitement. So how long before this becomes, moves off Twitter X and becomes our, as X becomes the everything platform, we lose access because we go after targeted groups. And what are the pro-Israel accounts, like the grifters and the genocidal pro-Israel accounts, like Eyal Yacobi and Stop Anti-Semitism, which ruins people's lives for criticizing Israel? Check out their semantic contextual scoring. They're getting like plus 80, plus 70. Their social credit is elite. So I think this is pretty significant.
Well, I just asked Grok about this just as we're on the air, and now the new explanation from Grok, and this I assume is not what you got when you search your score, is that this is all fake. Basically, this is what it calls a viral hallucination. That this is what Grok says, that this is not based on internal data, that there's no public or leaked real X algorithm fields. The viral examples around this prompt show it generating spoofed outputs for various accounts, but it's all simulated by the model responding to the prompt. It's not pulled from any actual backend. So it's not, but what Grok is now saying is that this is not coming from its own internal data. It's basically Grok took the command and based on someone's public profile and claims about them in public, came up with all this. So this is not actually internal data. This is Grok's new explanation. But which seems weird. So Grok, without telling someone, took part in like basically like a meme in a bit, and now they want us to think that
it was all a dream.
Yeah, that's what they're basically saying. Now we know Grok has been modified before. Like, so for example, there was a time when Grok was actually calling the genocide in Gaza a genocide, and then it got reprogrammed. There also was a time when Grok like went full Nazi and basically started promoting white supremacy in line with the views of its owner, Elon Musk. And so, I mean, given that this has caused a big controversy, I don't know what to believe here, but one possibility is that Grok was modified now with this story to say this is all basically like a viral hallucination to cover up the fact that it leaked some real data.
That's what I'm going to go with for a number of reasons. Grok is wrong all the time. Grok sometimes tries to deceive you. Grok has quote unquote malfunctioned. Remember when Grok went like full Nazi for a day? That was interesting. But also, I have like 850,000 followers on Twitter, and I get disproportionately low engagement. I have gotten that since something changed after Elon Musk went to Israel and did like his Auschwitz tour with Ben Shapiro. Everything started changing, and you saw pro-Israel accounts getting boosted. And I'll get like 1,000, 2,000 likes, but it's not commensurate to my follower level. So I've always known something was up. Elon Musk has said you can on Twitter X, you can have freedom of speech, but not freedom of reach. So it's implied. But I mean, I would say the same for you. You have a very high follower count, but you look at like anyone who blurted out anything supporting regime change on Iran this month was getting 50,000 likes. It was obviously being boosted.
Well, listen, I don't want to rule out just the possibility that many people just have me on mute because they don't want to see my post. But also, look, I've been told by people that, the only time I see your tweets is if I go to your page, and it never gets, so that I've been told that a lot, but I don't know. I don't know. And like, what are we going to do? Like, it's just, we're all at the mercy of these tech overlords, and we can complain, and it's good to do that. But look, the bottom line is the genocide has changed things. And no matter how much algorithmic suppression they can come up with, they're just not going to brainwash people into supporting Israel and to, turning away from the genocide. So I just think no matter what they try to do, no matter how many new platforms they buy up, like just this week, the Ellisons took control of TikTok after the forced sale because too many young people were seeing images of dead Palestinian children. They can do all that, but ultimately, they haven't won the people, and that to me is what's most important. And if we get suppressed on Twitter, you know, it is what it is.
Is what it is. We'll just sell the Grayzone out of old school newspaper boxes. I'm not ruling that out. We'll send it out like Jacobin. Like we can do that.
The Grayzone Gazette. I like that. I like that.
Do you know Palestine News Network? The dude who like hounds Israeli, like trashy Israelis in Miami and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, your face looks like a freaking frog. Like, you know, I mean, some of it's kind of satisfying. He's I grew up with that guy, Ramsey. He's the man. And he was just kicked off TikTok for offline behavior.
What?
That's a new policy.
Wow.
So your conduct offline, if you follow the terms of service online on TikTok, you can still be kicked off for being naughty to Israelis offline. Or like they could say, oh, you got a DUI. So that's a new thing that I think the Ellison owned TikTok has brought in.
There was that brief window before Elon went to Israel where I do think we had something approaching free speech, because there was, under the old Twitter regime, a lot of censorship. There was, like, I rember prominent accounts.
Oh, it's crazy.
Being kicked. I mean, they censored Trump, for example, you know, and many there were many leftists, you know, anti-imperialist accounts that were censored too. And so whenever there was a certain point when Elon came back, those accounts were restored. And this is before he went full on Zio. And so there was a moment of free speech, and it was a glorious time. But all that's long behind us.
I think that's really my basis for suspecting that we are being deboosted, is because there was that brief honeymoon period where we were getting likes and retweets commensurate to our follower count, and it felt natural. After the old regime of like Obama Biden regime was vanquished, and we all probably would have been suspended and under that regime after October 7th. So I can live with at least existing in this techno-feudalist virtual order, but it's nice to see how we're being possibly algorithmically deboosted. It all makes sense. I have a hard time believing that was all hallucination.
It was all a dream. That's what they're saying. That's Grok's official line. I'm not joking.
It was all a dream.
Yeah, a visual hallucination.
Well, it was another hallucination I had that actually, where I actually grew and my consciousness rose. So I'm glad for it. And I think this is a good transition actually to Iran, because after the Iranian government blacked out the internet and then defeated Elon Musk's Starlink, which had been smuggled in by US intelligence and other foreign intelligence services as a workaround, the violence that we saw plaguing Iranian cities for basically 2 days, January 8th and January 9th, leaving thousands dead, hundreds of banks, fire stations, mosques, ATMs, schools, seminaries, ambulances, buses, police cars burned and destroyed, ended because the coordinated riot cells, which infiltrated and essentially overtook previously peaceful protests over the plummeting Iranian currency, the plummeting value of Iranian currency, were unable to get instructions from abroad. And networks like Iran International, which are effectively controlled by Israel, were unable to incite violence and pump propaganda. It's no coincidence that everything just ended when the internet blackout occurred. This kind of confirms the theory of what is a book by Yasha Levine?
Surveillance Valley.
Surveillance Valley. I think it's behind me somewhere, which is that the internet was actually not designed to liberate humanity and create this virtual global marketplace of ideas, but actually to imprison us and to be used as a weapon against anyone who, or any country or entity that disobeys the US enforced hegemonic order. And that's Iran. That's the Islamic Republic. They disobeyed. So the internet was being used as a weapon against them. And now we're kind of in this interregnum period where I believe it's the USS Abraham Lincoln, a carrier battle group, has arrived in the Persian Gulf and is poised to potentially attack Iran. We're in this period between the riots, which were falsely characterized simply as protests, which I saw as an extension of the 12-day war, and whatever comes next. But Iran defeated that phase with a significant price and with a significant death toll. And that means there's a lot of lobbying, a lot of freaking out in Washington. Trump is being pushed very hard to attack Iran. One figure who's determined, well, actually, let's look at what Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, or is it Bessent? Is it Bessent or Bessent?
Bessent, I believe.
Bessent's better because it doesn't sound like cent, because this guy's a billionaire.
Yes.
I think all Trump cabinet secretaries have to be billionaires. He made one of the most revealing comments I've ever heard about the U.S. war on Iran from a high-level U.S. official in Davos at the World Economic Forum in an interview with Fox's Maria Bartiromo. Let's take a look.
What do you want to say about sanctions? Something else you've been working on, of course. What are you planning there in terms of Iran and the impact there? Do sanctions actually work? And the same question with regard to 500% secondary sanctions or tariffs on countries who purchase energy products from Russia.
Okay, so two things there. There are Treasury sanctions. And if you look at a speech that I gave at the Economic Club of New York last March, I said that I believe the Iranian currency was on the verge of collapse, that if I were an Iranian citizen, I would take my money out. President Trump ordered Treasury and our OFAC division, Office of Foreign Asset Control, to put maximum pressure on Iran, and it's worked. Because in December, their economy collapsed. We saw a major bank go under. The central bank has started to print money. There is a dollar shortage. They are not able to get imports, and this is why the people took to the street. So this is economic statecraft, no shots fired, and things are moving in a very positive way here.
And he went on to talk about secondary sanctions on Russia. Aaron, what's your takeaway from Bessent's comments?
Well, he's admitting that the currency crash that sparked these latest protests was the result of U.S. what he calls economic statecraft. And he's also admitting that the goal is to cause misery for ordinary people so that they go out in the streets. He wants to cause unrest. He wants to cause economic collapse. And how anybody, I mean, I know plenty of people from Iran who have a lot of criticisms of their government, but how anyone can support the deliberate immiseration of their fellow nationals of a whole country, and can think how it's possibly helping the people of Iran to cause them misery and poverty. It's just he gives away the game right there. He's saying the point of U.S. policy is to hurt the people of Iran so that they go out and protest, and then the hope is that there'll be enough violence that the U.S. can use that as a pretext to bomb. I mean, he didn't admit that part, but that's what Mike Pompeo has been trying to do by openly saying that the Mossad is involved in all these protests. They want government repression. They want mayhem. They want to cause violence and chaos, while not, of course, mentioning the elements of the protest that they've armed themselves because they want to destroy the country and balkanize it. And how anyone who cares about Iran, the people there, can support all that is just beyond me.
Well, a lot of the people who support it are on the outside and don't know what it's like to live under siege. But for 14 years, Iran has effectively been under siege. Iran's central bank has been sanctioned. It's been kicked out of the SWIFT system. The IRGC is defined as a terrorist organization. It's affiliated with countless businesses inside Iran. It's impossible for Iran to export oil and have revenue without having a shadow fleet. Its shadow fleet has been attacked. We're seeing what's happening with Venezuela's shadow fleet, where they're not even allowed to move. And that creates corruption. It distorts the economy. This is a point that Ali Alizadeh, who I interviewed last week, made on our last live stream that I encourage everyone to watch, is that it creates corruption by design. And then the US pumps propaganda in, or the UK through BBC Persia, Iran International, and tells everyone, go out in the streets, protest the corruption. These protests were due to currency devaluation, which, as Scott Bessent admitted, was manipulated from the outside. And those protests received police protection. There was no violence, but then coordinated violence came in. And if I show you any of it, we've shown it on our Twitter accounts. It's out there for everyone to see. We have written about it. We'll get demonetized and suppressed because the scenes are so hideous. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of mobs of men beating to death unarmed Basij guards, beating random people to death, burning cars in the streets, setting mosques on fire. There's so many videos of mosques being set on fire, and it's odd. I mean, a lot of the American Muslim organizations are pretty quiet about this, but I guess some of those major organizations supported regime change in Syria, so maybe that has something to do with it. But I can show you one report that highlights the death toll, which is an official death toll from the Iranian government, which is pretty high, and presents some of the complexity that the human rights groups refuse to acknowledge. This is from Nahid Pouresa, who I just interviewed actually on the Grayzone. Check out her interview on our YouTube channel. She's been covering the aftermath of the riots, has been going to mosques that were burned. And this is her report for Press TV on the official government death toll.
Iran has released the official death toll from the recent foreign-backed terrorist attacks in the country, saying that 2,427 civilians and security forces were martyred. Among them, 15 individuals who were tragically burned entirely by fire. The Foundation of Martyrs and Veterans Affairs said 690 terrorists were also killed. Iran's Security Council says the height of the violence occurred on January 8 and 9, revealing an unprecedented level of brutality. It said terrorists shot indiscriminately at anyone in the streets, passerbys and protesters alike, to manufacture casualties and provide a pretext for the US President Donald Trump. It said terrorist elements engaged in Daesh-style crimes, including beheadings, stabbings, and burning individuals alive. The attacks caused widespread destruction with systematic assaults on shops, banks, mosques, hospitals, ambulances, fire stations, clinics, and public infrastructure. The terrorists engaged in systematic arson attacks, deliberately setting fire to civilian and public infrastructure across the country. They torched 350 mosques, desecrating places of worship. They targeted the economic foundation by burning 750 banks. Emergency and transportation services were severely hit, with 305 ambulances and buses destroyed, along with 253 bus stations and 24 gas stations. In the arson attacks, the terrorists also caused catastrophic damage to civilian infrastructure. According to official figures, they set fire to 700 shops, 200 schools, and 300 private homes. The total devastation indicates a coordinated campaign to dismantle the foundations of daily life and the governance. Intelligence findings suggest this campaign was a direct response to the failure of the 12-day war against the country by the US and the Israeli regime in June last year. Iran says it's taking legal steps against those responsible for the terrorist attacks, namely the US, and the Islamic Republic will not compromise on the sovereignty of Iran or its people.
Somebody watching this might say, well, this is state television, so why should we take this at face value? This could just be propaganda. Well, I think there's enough social media videos, and there's enough independent eyewitness accounts to corroborate all of this, including from people who took part in the protests, who are critical of the government. As the internet comes back online, I've heard a lot of these kind of stories, including for people who aren't government supporters. So I believe what she's saying here fully in terms of these figures, and there's just a lot of video to support it, and you just can't fake things like that. And also, what kind of Iranian patriot who wants to reform their country would carry out these acts of destruction? Like, if you want to win over hearts and minds, you think you're going to go and attack, burn mosques? That's not the way to do it. These are people not trying to reform their country, change things for the better. They're trying to sow destruction and chaos and balkanization, which is the Israeli-U.S. playbook. So that's the agenda that led to all this destruction.
Yeah, a few points on that. If you actually look at the pro-monarchist or monarchist media accounts and what their influencers are putting out and saying, they're very proud of the fact that they caused this level of mayhem and violence. They're taking credit for it. They're not hiding it in any way at all. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, and they see those who did this as freedom fighters. There were also MKO or MEK, Mojahedin al-Khalq cells that appeared to have been involved in Kermanshah, which is closer to some of the Kurdish areas. You had PJAK, like Kurdish PJAK separatist fighters who were in the streets with automatic weapons. I mean, none of this is in dispute. It's just a question of either how you want to, it's a question of how you perceive it. However, I mean, if you look read the New Yorker or any of these sort of boomer liberal publications, they cover it up completely. Amnesty International called the protests largely peaceful. They just completely lied about the whole thing. But I think anyone who pays attention to social media understands what happened. And the monarchists, again, they're proud of it. We've seen some of them celebrate, like Goldie Gamari, this Canadian whack job who is actually close to Reza Pahlavi, say, let's watch, on her live stream, let's watch some mosque burning videos. This is awesome. Because they associate mosques, all mosques, with the Islamic Republic. And so for them, it's burning down the Islamic Republic. And it's where the Islamic Revolution was organized in 79 in mosques. So they've taken on this Islamophobic perspective, burning down, destroying ambulances, destroying banks. All of that weakens the ability of Iranian society to respond if and when the US and Israel attack again. And we saw the so-called rebels in Syria. One of the first things they did was destroy Syria's surface-to-air missile batteries to make it easier for Israel to bomb Syria and the US and NATO to bomb Syria. So, but this has been stopped. Trump has said that Reza Pahlavi, the Potomac, Maryland-based fail son of the former king, who's never worked a job in his life and has come out of Iran with millions of stolen dollars to fund his wealthy lifestyle, which presumably is being supplemented by Israel, is frustrated. And he's pushing now for the first time for a U.S. bombing campaign. He's openly calling for U.S. bombing.
When he says there has to be a change of direction. And that's exactly what the Iranian people are asking
But
for.
if the Iranian people now have the support of the president on that idea, will that encourage them to take to the streets in even greater numbers and put more pressure on the regime from within?
Yes, and I think that the decisive factor would be the instrument of repression that has been unleashed against our people is what is the ultimate obstacle to overcome. What changes the odds in favor of the people that can finally take over the system and push to a complete collapse depends on calculated strategic strikes against these institutions.
And those would be American strikes?
It would be, well, it could be an American strike, it could be Israeli strike, it could be whatever. The Iranian people now are looking as the cavalry coming, because we can only hold the fort up to a point.
Yep.
The cavalry can help us overcome the odds. Look, this is a regime so desperate that it has to import elements from Lebanon, from Afghanistan, from Iraq as instrument of repression, because they are running out of elements of their own doing the dirty job against them. This is what's at stake. So the regime right now is on its last leg. It's on the verge of collapse. It's going to attempt every other means to yet again survive. That's why a definitive strike is going to completely reverse the odds in favor of the nation and defenseless people. That's what we need in terms of actual support.
So what do you strike?
Well, so what do you strike?
Do you strike command and control facilities of the IRGC? Do you launch a decapitation strike to take out the Ayatollah?
Multiple choice
What would
question.
you suggest either the United States or Israel or whoever's willing to do it take on?
I think if you're asking from the perspective of the people on the streets, is you have to neutralize every element that has been unleashed against them. So anything that ties to the regime mechanism of Islamic violence. Well, it could be at first being targeting, of course, IRGC, which is the main culprit here, or any other instrument of state apparatus of control or violence. That's already a big plus. And that cannot come across via diplomacy or via negotiation. This is where the promise that the president has given has been very heartening to the people of Iran. And if that is carried out, then it changes, as I said earlier, the whole complexion.
So he actually called for a systematic collapse of Iran to be brought on by airstrikes. He called the U.S. military the cavalry and said, we can't do it on our own, which means you don't have popular support. And he lies and claims that Iran is importing Hezbollah and the popular mobilization units from Iraq. I've seen that on monarchist accounts, and it's just completely fabricated. They're publishing photos from Iraq and claiming it's Iran. They're just the biggest propagandists and liars surrounding his public relations apparatus.
Yeah, they're taking what the U.S. did in Syria, which is send in foreign fighters from around the world to destroy Syria. And he's falsely claiming that Iran is doing the same in its own country. And, the Fox News anchor talking about command and control. What that really means, and they love to use that term, command and control. There's the same thing with Iraq. We're bombing command and control. What that means is infrastructure, energy infrastructure, sanitation infrastructure. That's what the U.S. did in Iraq, and that's what the U.S. would do here too, because you need to do that to destroy the government, to make things so miserable that people join you, or at least they accept your destruction of their country because they can't take it anymore. So that's what he means by command and control. And again, look, I'm sympathetic to people who have criticisms of any government. Like all of us living under any form of authority have problems with our government, and Iran's no exception. But why is it never talked about? Why don't we stop suffocating Iran? Iran's been under some form of U.S. aggression for the entire existence of the Islamic Republic. I mean, go back to the 80s, supporting Saddam Hussein as he attacked Iran, killed tens of thousands of people, used chemical weapons, bombing a Iranian civilian jetliner, the sanctions that destroyed the middle class of Iran, which traditionally have driven social change. None of that is ever considered to be a form of coercion, authoritarianism against the people of Iran, when that's exactly what it is. They didn't vote to be sanctioned and have their economy destroyed, now threatened with violence. So if you actually genuinely care about change inside Iran, why don't you leave them alone and let them have an economy? And when that happens, actually, you do see societies change, and I think for the better. And even inside Iran, you've seen, I think, changes sometimes in the face of popular pressure. This idea that it's just this total totalitarian state that's impervious to the people. First of all, they have a base of the population that supports them, which everyone wants to ignore. But you see that in the footage. Millions of people come out to support the government, and they did after these protests, and they did after Qasem Soleimani was killed. But also, after women life freedom, you now have the hijab decrees not being enforced, which is an example of how change from within can happen. And not only do we not have the right to impose it from without by sanctions and bombing threats, it also undermines the cause that we falsely claim to care about, which is people's rights and freedoms and all that stuff.
Well, the reason Iran can't have an economy is it would be an extremely powerful economy that would, interfere with some hegemonic objectives of a certain country in the region. It's really Israel. That's the main obstacle here, and why there can't be negotiations or diplomacy with Iran. I mean, we're really at a point where the only option the U.S. is considering toward Iran is war and death. There doesn't seem to be any other option, and Iran has to negotiate away its entire sovereignty to avoid it. And that's the message being sent here in this meeting of the Gusano Industrial Complex. I mean, Reza Pahlavi the Clown Prince of Potomac, Maryland, meeting with Maria Corina Machado, who was supposed to be the leader of Venezuela until regime change didn't happen after Maduro was kidnapped. And now they're just kind of confined to think tanks and congressional offices in Washington as they clamor for the U.S. to destroy their former countries in order to bring them into power. And Trump seems to be giving both of them a cold shoulder. So it's really unclear without them in the picture. I mean, this is pathetic. And I think it's only a matter of time, mark my words, before Maria Corina Machado goes to Israel to meet with Netanyahu. I would say she'd kiss the wall, but women aren't really allowed to. They have some tiny little women's section. Reza Pahlavi already kissed the wall. But these are figures on the margins right now, because there is no real opposition inside Iran that doesn't operate within the system of the Islamic Republic like the reformist camp. And they're not going to support the destruction of their country. Javad Zarif, he's not going to support the destruction of the country. What would happen? Pahlavi and his forces are calling for assassinating Iran's leader, Khamenei. What would happen? He'd be replaced. What would happen if the IRGC top commanders were assassinated? They were replaced in 8 hours by the leader on June 12th of last year. They don't have a plan for regime change in Iran that does not include U.S. boots on the ground. Same thing in Venezuela. The reason why Maria Corina Machado was not installed into power after promising $1.5 trillion in plunder of her country's assets to Trump Incorporated, Trump and his cronies, the reason is because the U.S. determined that it would be too costly, that there would have to have been a U.S. occupation that could have unleashed a civil war and a migration crisis to violently dislodge the Chavista movement, which has, as Aaron pointed out, in Iran, the Islamic Republic has a vast constituency of support, just as Chavismo does in Venezuela, despite years and years of siege. So they can't do it. So what's Trump going to do to Iran? I think the plan is Israel just wants him to do something and escalate and continue to escalate, because there's nothing that Netanyahu and Israel would like more than U.S. body bags coming home of U.S. service members, which will entrench the U.S. presence in the region and create an escalatory cycle where the U.S. has to continue to escalate and pour more bodies in until there's some kind of resolution. Netanyahu needs the U.S. to be increasingly involved. And what is Iran pledging to do? This time, according to Foreign Minister Araghchi, Iran will use all of the weapons at its disposal and go after the choke points of the global economy, the Strait of Hormuz, for example. And the world will financially suffer for this psychotic Israeli regime change war. So what's the next move? What's Trump's next move going to be? I think he either has to stand down or send us all into catastrophe.
We played the clip last time of Mike Pompeo on Fox News last month, where he said, basically, we cannot let Iran rebuild their air defenses because Iran's air defenses could take down Western aircraft. So Iran is not allowed to have a means of self-defense. So I think that's at minimum what Trump and Israel are going to target. That's what prompted Netanyahu to bomb Iran last time, because Iran was rebuilding its air defenses. This claim of a nuclear weapons program was just a complete fake. So at minimum, I think they'll be doing that. And I wouldn't be surprised if, as they did in Iraq with Shah Kanah, going after more civilian infrastructure, as they also did last time in June as well.
Yeah,
when they also hit civilian. I suspect there'll be more of that, because all they can do, and from their point of view and their strategy, is just make life increasingly miserable for ordinary people inside Iran.
Who's calling for this war in the U.S., like outside of Reza Pahlavi's office? Like, who's calling for this war? Like, who wants it? It's like Mark Levin and this guy.
The president may be considering military options still. it would be very difficult, I think, for the president to not consider some sort of major move against Iran, considering he drew a red line, the mass murder of protesters. Iran didn't just cross the red line, they jumped over it with both feet, shooting protesters by perhaps the tens of thousands in the streets in Iran. According to the Wall Street Journal, President Trump is still pressing aides for what he terms decisive military options. The discussions are happening while the U.S. sends an aircraft carrier and jet fighters to the Middle East. Those deployments may be the start of a broader buildup.
What would happen if I sped Ben Shapiro up, like even more than Ben Shapiro is sped up?
That would give President Trump the firepower to strike Iran should he choose to use them. So a revised suite of options are being created for the president, including some that would seek to push the regime out of power. How much can be done with air power is really the big question.
Okay, we get it.
He's a regime change snitch, like a tattletale. Like, you said you had the red line and you didn't enforce it, and lying about tens of thousands of protesters. So anyway, to answer your
question.
How
is that the red line? Where's the red? There is no U.S. policy of a red line in Iran.
Yes.
That would be like a Samantha Power red line. Since when does America first care about protests being repressed, except when they want to repress them in the United States by shooting, white liberal ladies in the face.
Exactly.
And then saying like FAFO, she was a lesbian, so she deserved it.
And this is where also all the people who fell for the chemical weapons deception in Syria with Obama's so-called red line, who believed the propaganda that Syria committed these chemical attacks, despite the evidence and despite basic logic. Like, why would Syria do the one thing that would invite U.S. military intervention that would trigger the so-called red line? This is where they've all played into a hegemonic agenda far beyond Syria, because now what people like Ben Shapiro are doing is taking the so-called red line that Obama failed to enforce and trying to say to Trump, hey, look, you're acting like Obama here. And we know Trump hates Obama and wants to distance himself from everything Obama did. And so wants to do the opposite, as he did in Ukraine, where he sent weapons that Obama wouldn't send. So this is where if you fall for neocon propaganda, it's not even just dangerous in the case where it first applies, in this case, Syria. Now it's redounding to Iran. So anybody who fell for the chemical weapons deception still won't grapple with what a scam it was. You're still playing into neocons, this time in Iran.
Great point. And Trump was already duped, and Trump played into their hands by declaring that help is on the way to Iranians and reading a prepared statement, urging them to take over their institutions. It's kind of like the same way that Obama fell into the hands of the CIA and MI6, and by promising a response, by setting down the red line, promising a response, and then realizing after committing to arming the so-called moderate rebels in Syria, who are really Al-Qaeda, that bombing the hell out of Damascus and regime change might have actually been a bad idea. And so he created the sense among the armed opposition that they just simply had to keep fighting, and that the U.S. would eventually come as their cavalry, just as there was this sense created among Iranian rioters that Reza Pahlavi or Mariam Rajavi or whatever CIA Israeli-backed tool would come into power if they just kept rioting. And then help didn't come, because what happened? There was a National Security Council meeting at the White House last week, and Israel's missile defenses, anti-missile defenses, were not prepared. They weren't ready for Iran's ballistic missiles, including the Khorramshahr 5, which is fresh off the shelves and is a hypersonic missile. So they said, oh wait, we need time to prepare. There's not a carrier battle group there. Wait, all right, well, hope you had your fun with your riots. That was it. Trump may have just sold them out, just as Reza Pahlavi did, just as Obama did in Syria, until we'll talk about that later, until Ahmed al-Sharaa marched into Aleppo following years and years of sanctions. So the option might be, we'll just wait and crush Iran economically, and then we'll come back in. But then again, they could attack at any moment.
And by the way, on the issue of Obama, Obama is the president in recent years who, more than anyone else, has tried diplomacy with Iran. But even there, he never fully lifted the sanctions that he promised to, right? The whole premise of the Iran deal was that in exchange for caps on Iranian enrichment, Obama would lift sanctions. Iran lived up to its end of the bargain. Obama didn't. He never fully lifted those sanctions, of course. And then Trump came in and then fully reimposed the sanctions. But even the president who actually tried diplomacy still did not fully go through with it. He didn't even act in good faith, because the U.S., no matter who's in charge, is so entrenched in its commitment to hostility toward a government marked for regime change, especially one as powerful and influential as Iran.
They released some frozen assets that had been stolen from Iran, and then Trump said, "Oh, that money was stolen from us. We're paying Iran." Like, no, that's money you stole from them, because the U.S. controls the world financial system. But Iran never got real sanctions relief. And the lesson was, don't vote for the reformists, vote for the principalists, and look east, the policy followed by Ibrahim Raisi, because the U.S. cannot be trusted in any deal. And if you make a deal with them, they'll elect some anti-Iran psycho who will then reverse everything. That's the lesson to Iranians. On a kind of related note, because it's been well understood that the Mossad has been involved in these riots in Iran, at least they've sought to take credit for it and declared that they were walking alongside the protesters and rioters on their official Farsi Twitter X account and then through various other forums, including Israeli media. I published one of the weirder reports that I've done in a while about a new series of Mossad recruitment ads that had been purchased on Google and have been appearing on YouTube and various social media platforms. They're still on Twitter X. And these were sourced, these ads, if you actually went on Google Ad Transparency and typed in mossad.gov.il, you would find these ads listed under Desi Banks Productions, LLC. And who is Desi Banks? He is an Atlanta-based comedian and influencer who's currently on tour. He's like a stand-up comic. He has like 11 million followers on Instagram. And he has no politics at all. He's completely apolitical. How did this happen? What the hell is going on here? So I published this piece. I mean, these ads are all in Farsi. They're all recruiting Iranians. Now they're saying, you know, the regime change is coming. The fall of the Islamic Republic is coming. Join us. We will protect you. We will give you money. And they're going out through this Atlanta-based influencers LLC, his company. This is the article. New Mossad recruitment ads exploit Iran's unrest with help from U.S. comedian. This is like one of the ads. It's what it looks like. This is on Twitter. The final days of the regime have arrived. If you know someone who works in sensitive industries and centers, contact us. And then there's a Google Docs form. And you can see the image shows a man seated in front of, you know, state security motorcycles, police motorcycles. So they're clearly trying to exploit the riots for new recruits. Here's another one showing the Islamic Republic's being thrown in the garbage. Join us. This is one that's gone out on YouTube. And then this is Desi Banks doing one of his comedy sketches. One of the most unlikely characters to be servicing a Mossad ad recruitment campaign through Google. So what the hell happened? I actually sent a friend in Atlanta to the listed address on the LLC of Desi Banks Production, public forums. No one was home. I mean, he was on tour. We made efforts to reach him. Jack Paulson, a journalist who's actually one of the best journalists doing critical reporting on intelligence. He broke this story in September and reached out to Desi Banks's team. They didn't respond. But after I reported this, Google took down the ads for and told us for egregious violations. So we actually seemingly scored a blow against one of the most nefarious forces in the world, the Mossad, and got their recruitment ads taken down. And then Desi Banks comes out with a cryptic comment on Twitter saying, you know, when things are going good, someone tries to come along and knock you off your pivot. And then he responded directly and wrote, "Stop believing BS. I hate that this is happening to me because I don't even know what any of this is. People are really getting fooled for clickbait. I have kids and I would never in my life be involved in something like this. Someone used my LLC without my knowledge. How? I don't know yet. I don't even know if half of what's being posted is real, but my team is digging into it right now. I have no idea who's doing this or why." And then he just totally denies doing any of this with his knowledge, which is very possibly true. And I responded to him. And one of the points that I made to him is that his agent, he is represented by United Talent Agency. Aaron, you probably are familiar with them. If you're not, it's all good because this kind of like came to me. But do you remember what they did to Susan Sarandon?
Well, of course. After October 7th, they dropped her and basically helped make sure that she couldn't work in America ever again as an actress. And that's why all of her films that she's been in, I think, since are financed in Europe, because she was excommunicated from Hollywood for criticizing Israel and criticizing Zionism.
Exactly. And Bob Villain was represented by them. And then at the Glastonbury Festival, he denounced the IDF very strongly. He was dropped and they ended his US tour. UTA is like its CEOs and its directors. They are working hand in glove with Israel and the Israeli Foreign Ministry. They are overtly Zionist. They also excommunicated Mel Gibson, I think. So they have the power to pretty much destroy you if you do anything against Israel. But do they have the power to get you to, I don't know, introduce you to shady individuals who would get you to sign an operating agreement where you don't read the small print that gives them the ability to use your LLC? Because how the hell do you take out Google ads without your knowledge when Google requires you to produce government ID showing your control over the LLC? Like, you have to provide your ID to them as well as your EIN, your LLC number. How did that happen? How does he not know? Either his identity was stolen or he signed away his rights and someone else is managing this for him.
I'm going to go with stolen identity here because if you're the Mossad or whoever was behind this, like, why would you need his production company to buy your ads? Like, when you know that's eventually going to get discovered, like, why not use some other shady front group that you yourself control? It just doesn't. This is a very bizarre story.
Why not just set up some shell company through your cutouts in the U.S. so nobody gets embarrassed and so he hasn't really explained. He hasn't explained anything. He keeps saying he doesn't know how it happened. He sent in this grifter, Angela Stanton King, who's actually gone on free trips to Israel to attack me. She's like acting as a spokesman now, it seems like. This is a lady who went to prison for conspiracy to, I don't know if it was to defraud people or what, but Trump pardoned her. And very odd.
Well, that actually swings us back in the direction of maybe he did. Listen, I don't want to speculate about this, but so he's denying having any ties to Israel, but yet he's associated with a pro-Israel influencer to attack you for raising questions about that.
This is the lady attacking me. Hold on. And I went to Twitter to search for it. Every time I go to Twitter to search for anything, some neocon who before October 7th was getting no engagement is like mined directly into my feed. So I'm a little distracted here. Here, let me find her. Yeah. Well, she might have deleted these tweets, but anyway, yeah, Angela Stanton King, very suspect character, is sort of acting as his attack dog. And he has not provided any explanation. So I think the most likely theory is that his agents did it without his knowledge. I mean, there are, paid influencers, particularly, and Israel loves to buy Black influencers to neutralize an element in the US that supports Palestinians, Black Americans. But I don't even know if that's what happened here. I think he may be afraid to actually reveal that the people who are responsible for his rising career might be responsible for this. But it's not, what I would say to Desi Banks is he's not necessarily the target here. I'm not out to destroy him. The public just deserves to know how this is done and how the Mossad operates. And I think there's more to this story. So it is really an obligation for him to provide transparency, not only to protect his own reputation, but for humanity, because the Mossad is the purest distillation and most clear embodiment of evil. It is a global assassination agency. So let's see if he has the courage to do this, but I think he's hiding something. And if someone stole my identity or got me to sign something and then used my identification to service ads for a global assassination agency, I'd probably be pretty mad. So here we are. This is where we are right now with this investigation. Is the person who ran the company that serviced these ads is just throwing up his hands and shrugging and saying, I don't know. And he's hoping everybody else moves on. And he sent this shill to attack me. And Jack Paulson, the journalist who exposed this first back in September. So I think we should move on. What's everybody saying here? This isn't going away though. It's funny how the rest of the media, like the Daily Beast, like tabloid, they don't want to cover this. A story involving a fair, like, B-list celebrity who could be an A-lister. He's pretty well known in the comedy world, servicing ads for the Mossad, and there's like no coverage of it. They all know this is happening.
In fairness, I'd never heard of him. I'm pretty up on the comedy world, so he's. But this is a very bizarre story, and kudos to you and Jack Paulson for bringing this to light. And someone's gonna have to give an explanation.
He's actually kind of talented. Like, he's kind of funny. He has 11 million followers on Instagram, okay. I think. But probably not like a crossover with Grayzone fans because he's totally apolitical. He sold out 2 shows in Philly. Anyway, he's not someone. I'll be opening for Jimmy Dore. I doubt this guy's gonna invite me on stage. So the master plan. You want to talk about the master plan?
Yeah, well, Jared Kushner has unveiled the master plan for Gaza, aka the Master's Plan. He did this at Davos, the gathering of global elites, and this is the brainchild of the so-called Board of Peace, which is headed by Donald Trump with the blessing of the UN Security Council. Because recall that at a recent meeting of the UN Security Council, Russia and China did not veto a measure that basically makes Trump the leader of Gaza forever. Even after he leaves the White House, he'll still be the head of the so-called Board of Peace. And so Jared Kushner unveiled their so-called master plan for Gaza. as people are still being killed every single day by Israeli bombs, as people are still suffering because they lack food, they lack shelter, all being blocked by Israel, as infants are still freezing to death, Jared Kushner went to Davos and presented to us this dystopian master plan.
This is Jared Kushner, who nobody elected, who is not a member of the U.S. government, has no official position. He is merely the son of a Jewish Zionist billionaire who Trump pardoned and who was I think a business partner of Trump, and is now Trump's son-in-law through Ivanka. So he gets to determine the future of the long-suffering population of Gaza through his explicitly titled master plan.
So we did a master plan. We brought in, I think, Yakir Gabay, who's one of the most successful real estate developers and brilliant people I know.
We really need
He's
to watch
volunteered
it
to
all.
do this, not for profit, really because of his heart. He wants to do this. And we've developed ways to redevelop Gaza. Gaza, as President Trump's been saying, has amazing potential. And this is for the people of Gaza. We've developed it into zones. In the beginning, we were toying with the idea of saying, let's build a free zone, and then we have a Hamas zone. And then we said, you know what, let's just plan for catastrophic success. Hamas signed a deal to demilitarize. That is what we are going to enforce. People ask us what our plan B is. We do not have a plan B. We have a plan. We signed an agreement. We are all committed to making that agreement work. There's a master plan. We'll be doing it in phasing. In the Middle East, they build cities like this in 2-3 million people. They build this in 3 years. And so stuff like this is very doable if we make it happen. Rafah will start with. This will show a lot of workforce housing. We think this could be done in 2-3 years. We've already started removing the rubble and doing some of the demolition. And then New Gaza. It could be a hope. It could be a destination, have a lot of industry, and really be a place that the people there can thrive, have great employment. Once this starts going, we think there should be 100% full employment and opportunity for everybody there. And we have a lot of data on what can be, but we think that this really gives the Gazan people an opportunity to live their aspirations. But it all starts with security, and it all starts with governance. Final note I'll just say on the Board of Peace, which is that all the lessons we're doing is we're basically studying the best practices from all over the world, and we're watching who does education the best, who does healthcare delivery the best. All these things it's not secret IP. All this is IP that the Board of Peace is going to make public, and we want to encourage all the countries to be able to follow these best practices. A lot of the things that President Trump is doing in America, if they're working, we should all be copying them. If we find what's working in other countries, we should be copying them too. And so what the Board of Peace will have the ability to do if we're successful with Gaza is really show how do you do peace implementation, which is something that when we got this deal done, we didn't really find too much expertise or know-how on how to do it. So as we're creating this system, hopefully it's something that we can just document these learnings and make them available to all else who want to use them in the future. So demilitarization, this is something we're starting now. We have a new government in Gaza. This government will be working with Hamas on the demilitarization to really take the principles that were agreed to in the document to the next phase. And hopefully that will be successful. Without that, we can't rebuild. So if Hamas does not demilitarize, that will be what holds back Gaza and the people of Gaza from achieving their aspiration. And that's very important. So the next 100 days, we're going to continue to just be heads down and focused on making sure this is implemented. We continue to be focused on humanitarian aid, humanitarian shelter, but then creating the conditions to move forward. So thank you. Final point I'll just make is this is really only possible because of the work of so many people and President Trump's great leadership. But a lot of you have been asking, how can we help? So the countries have all been incredibly generous. We'll be doing the first conference where we'll announce a lot of the contributions that will be made in a couple of weeks in Washington. From the private sector, there'll be amazing investment opportunities. I know it's a little risky to be investing in a place like this, but we need you to come, take faith, invest in the people, try to be a part of it. And then finally, I'll just talk to people on the media and on the social media, which is this deal only happened because we worked with Israel, we worked with Turkey, we worked with Qatar, we worked with Saudi, we worked with Egypt. I mean, everyone worked together. We worked with UAE. We all worked together to make this happen. I see a lot of people trying to escalate, criticizing together to make this happen. I see
no one from Europe.
A lot of people trying to escalate, criticizing Israel or Israelis criticizing Turkey or Qatar. Just calm down for 30 days. I think that the war's over. Let's do our best to try working together. Our goal here is peace between Israel and the Palestinian people. Everyone wants to live peacefully. Everyone wants to live with dignity. Let's put our efforts towards promoting those who are doing the work to build this up, like Ali and his committee. Let's focus on the positive stories and let's just calm down, turn a new chapter. And if we believe that peace is possible, then peace really can be possible. So we're going to continue to work every day. We need all of your help to do it. And again, I just really want to thank President Trump for his leadership in doing this. This would not have been possible without your commitment to this. Everyone thought it was impossible to end this war. You never gave up. You never stopped. Every time there was a setback, you told us to try harder. You gave us different ideas. And we've made several impossible things happen just in Gaza to date. And there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to make even more impossible things happen. So really.
So, yeah. Jewish Zionist real estate guy gets to redesign Gaza into a biometric concentration camp with the support or consent of those who want to buy into Trump's pay for play board for peace, which requires a $1 billion pay-in. It's modeled, the logo is modeled after the UN Security Council logo, but with gold wings.
God.
So Trump is aiming to replace the UN Security Council and create a one world Trumpian government. And Gaza becomes the basis for the one world biometric radical Zionist 1% Trump incorporated government that countries must pay into in order to enrich Trump and his cronies for a seat at the table. And Turkey and Qatar have agreed, and Russia and China did not veto at the Security Council this plan. And now Putin is buying into it.
And Putin's only condition apparently is he wants frozen Russian assets to pay for his initiation fee. That's his only concern. I mean, how somebody's not boycotting this thing is beyond me. Spain has boycotted this, to their credit, but how anyone can sign on to this? There's no Palestinians. In fact, the Board of Peace doesn't even mention Palestinians in its charter. There's no Palestinians on the so-called Board of Peace. It's mostly Zionists, including Benjamin Netanyahu has been invited by Trump, and I believe he accepted.
Yep.
And then and their plan for Gaza itself. Well, maybe we'll get to that, but it truly is every single dystopian fantasy distilled into one. I mean, this really is it right here. And the fact that they'll want to do it on what is essentially a mass grave, build new concentration camps inside a concentration camp they've destroyed. You really couldn't write it if you were trying to imagine something so hellish.
1948, quote unquote, Israel was created. Palestinians were subjected to the Nakba. That was when the whole infrastructure of the post-World War international order was established, including the UN and the model of the Security Council, the International Declaration of Human Rights, Geneva Conventions were being developed into this international order. And yet the UN voted to establish Israel, one of the most shameful crimes in modern history. And now it's all come full circle following the Gaza Holocaust. From one Holocaust to another, the UN is being outmoded by the Trumpian one world government known as in the most Orwellian terms possible, as a Board of Peace, with the consent of key regional players. And let's go back to Gaza, where we will see the master plan in detail. And again, I just want to emphasize this. This is a map of Gaza, but this is coming to a neighborhood near you if we allow this to happen. This is a model for humanity by our AI warlord masters. This is what the map looks like. And you can see yellow is where the so-called the unpeople, the refugee unpeople will live. Then the brown is for industrial complex data centers. Then there's one road along the side, highways and local transportation. And parks, agriculture, and sports facilities are green. There's a port. It looks pretty good, an airport. Everything's based in the south, though. That north, that brown zone is, those are the refugee camps that Israel wiped off the map in Jabalia, Beit Hanun. Gaza City is reduced to a tiny little space. There's a park in the middle of Gaza City to reduce residential areas. And here's a pretty good analysis of what this map means from someone named called Hamza Attar. Pink is where the rich live. Yellow is for the workforce, the slaves who will work in the data centers and sweatshops. White,
zoom in a little more if you can.
Yeah. White, normalizing Israeli occupation. So look at these white areas here. And that's, the areas bordering Israel. So Israel gets this massive buffer zone. There's no border with Egypt. So the Philadelphia corridor is completely controlled by Israel. Shifting balance from Gaza City to Khan Yunis and Rafah in the south. Gaza City population is now the highest, but it'll be reversed because that's, Gaza City is the base of the middle class in Gaza, as well as the governing facilities. Industrial hubs mean relying on the Israeli supply chain. Electricity can be cut off whenever Israel wants. Rafah and Khan Yunis are being engineered as attractive cities to move Palestinians away from Gaza City towards the south. It also will move Palestinians toward Egypt and push them out ultimately. The new port was moved to Rafah to be adjacent to the Israeli occupied area. It's an Israeli controlled port. Then there's a marina for the rich, islands for rich investors or rulers to live away from the population is in section 10. So there it is. I mean, it's basically like a gigantic, biometrically controlled smart city. And right now, as Aaron pointed out, Gaza's being bombed. Several journalists were murdered 2 days ago while covering an Egyptian Humanitarian Foundation ceremony. People are being killed for trying to return to their homes across the so-called yellow line, which is in the areas in white in that map, because that's where Israel is now demolishing homes. And Jared Kushner refers to that in his speech. He says, we're clearing out the rubble. We're clearing out the rubble. Israel is blowing up homes across the yellow line to create the basis for this giant biometric concentration camp known as Gaza. That's where they're going to build new Rafah, which is in these maps from the master plan, which is in the PowerPoint presentation from the master plan, and new Khan Yunis. And then they're going to move in on the areas which are controlled by the resistance in Gaza. And they need to demilitarize and de-radicalize in order to push the population into these camps and like basically de facto slave camps, reservations. They're already there, but they're imposing this map on top of them. The Palestinians have never mattered. Their voices don't matter. There are no Palestinians on the board of peace. They don't exist as humanity. They didn't exist in 1948 when the UN voted, and they don't exist today. And this is, again, a model coming to you in the techno-feudalist future, and the only thing that's standing between it and us is the Palestinian resistance. The Palestinian resistance represented by murdered voices like Abu Obaida. Yeah, I said it. They were the true freedom fighters of humanity, standing against the Tony Blairs, the Larry Ellisons, the Jared Kushners, and the Gulf slime bags who want to profit from this. That's the reality. And yes, Tony Blair is on the board of peace. What can we say about the figures on the board of peace?
The fact that Trump picked Tony Blair, it's almost if he wants to go out of his way to insult the people of the Middle East, to like just just flaunt in their faces how he is the colonial overlord, to the point where he's going to install someone who took part in the invasion of Iraq, which has now led to so many millions of deaths. I mean, the arrogance, the hubris here of Trump and putting in Tony Blair. Because why else would you put in Tony Blair? I mean, yes, he's connected to all the Gulf monarchies, but plenty of people are. Yeah, sure. But he's just showing such contempt for the people at every opportunity that he can. And the fact that that you pointed this out, Jared Kushner, on top of being a Jewish Zionist American, being, handed the keys to Gaza, doesn't even have a government position. So who is this guy and why is he there? He's there because he's Israel first. And that's what the message is if you want to if you want to have a future, if you want to be able to survive in your own land, if you're Palestinian, you have to put Israel's needs first. And that's what the master's plan does here in Gaza.
It's a multi-tiered global payola system as well. To get on the board of peace, you pay Trump $1 billion. And then below Trump is Jared Kushner, the fixer, who has this company, which is taking in investments, which is an investment firm that's getting money from the Emirati Sovereign Investment Fund, for example, and all these Gulf billionaires. And he wants to profit from Gaza. And who else could profit from Gaza? You see there's all these data centers planned for Gaza. Oracle, the AI warlords. And so they have to pay Jared Kushner to get into Gaza. And then once there, they can profit from the genocide of Palestinians by rebuilding this seafront property, quote unquote, rebuilding it. Larry Ellison's directly involved here. Yes, the owner of TikTok, whose son, Israel Firster David Ellison, close contact of the Israeli government, took over Paramount and handed the keys to CBS to Barry Weiss. The Ellison family are involved through Tony Blair because they are paying for the Tony Blair Institute. I think they're one of the largest donors to the Tony Blair Institute, Larry Ellison and Oracle are. And that's why Tony Blair is out there advancing digital ID and all of these surveillance capitalist techno solutions. Watch this. This is a chilling clip that I think took place. This took place at a conference, I think in the United Arab Emirates. It's actually called the World Government Summit. Like if I was some John Birch guy from the 1950s, everything we're talking about would have like caused me to blow my brains out. Watch, this is so. Can we stop saying dystopian and Orwellian? Like I need like a thesaurus.
What? Because you're right.
This is reptilian shapeshifter Tony Blair, modeled after Nikolai Karpathia, the Antichrist of Tim LaHaye's Left Behind series.
Forefront of this revolution, what it means for what government should do in terms of its digital infrastructure, digital ID, data centers, and so on.
The first thing a country needs to do.
That's Larry Ellison of Oracle, Tony Blair's top donor.
Unify all of their data so it can be consumed and used by the AI model. You have to take all of your healthcare data, your diagnostic data, your electronic health records, your genomic data. The NHS in the UK has.
Did you hear what he just said? Genomic data?
An incredible amount of population data, but it's fragmented. It's not easily accessible by these AI models. We have to take all of this data we have in our country and move it into a single, if you will, unified data platform. So we provide context. When we want to ask a question, we've provided that AI model with all the data they need to understand our country. So that's the big step. That's kind of the missing link. We need to unify all of the national data, put it into a database where it's easily consumable by the AI model, and then ask whatever question you like.
Tell us a bit.
So even genomic data, like the stuff 23andMe uses and potentially more, actually, if you go to prison or you go to jail for a day, the marshals they try to get your DNA. So DNA, all of your data, all centralized in one place for the AI warlords to access. That's the Palantir model. Palantir has been proposed as a potential participant in Gaza after they participated in the genocide, providing targeting assistance to the Israeli genocide machine. So and they're at the World Government Summit. It's all just being rammed in our face right now, what they want. And Tony Blair, that's how he got the seat, I think, on the Board of Peace. That's the future. The one thing standing against it that can complicate it is the resistance in Gaza that's being asked to disarm and move into biometric concentration camps and provide their data and their genomic data and their DNA to Larry Ellison's One World AI data center. And yeah.
What's amazing to me is Palestinians in Gaza are arguably, I think, the most surveilled population in the world already. But under this plan, they would find new ways to intrude into people's lives and control, everything they do. Like to be able to live in one of these like new population centers, you have to give, like, everyone's eyes would be scanned. It's, again, I'm sorry, it's a trope at this point, dystopian, but they want to somehow increase the surveillance of one of the most surveilled populations in the world.
I don't think Israelis allow genomic testing. Like they don't allow genomic ancestry testing.
Yeah, they'll get an exemption. They'll get an exemption. I'm sure that will be one of Larry Ellison's first moves, is to exempt, Israelis, because they come from European stock, not Middle Eastern stock. And
you mean his name is not really Netanyahu? It's Milikovsky?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Although they want to explain why Israel has a higher than normal rate of skin cancer. I mean, it's too bad that they can't get those genomic insights, because that would help explain why people of European descent who have parked themselves in the Middle East by expelling the original inhabitants keep getting skin cancer at higher rates.
Yeah. I wonder why they're getting skin cancer. This is from the Jerusalem Post, just for reference. If you live in Israel and want to find out where your family comes from, what do? One thing's for certain, an ancestry kit from the local pharmacy is out of the question, according to a Yediot Aharonot report. While millions of such kits have been sold in the United States, Israelis are forbidden to buy ancestry DNA kits from the store without presenting a court order, as the Israeli government controls these types of purchases due to the genetic information law.
Wow.
So it's real.
Wow.
I come from the Bible, folks. I come from the Bible. This is what I am what Moses looked like.
I have a relative who did and I come from Ukraine. That's my origin, is Ukraine. And that's the origins of most Jews, is Ukraine. That's our homeland.
Me too.
Ukraine
in the membrane. We're self-hating Ukrainians.
Exactly.
I don't know. Maybe I don't want to support the people who tried to exterminate my family. I just have a little dignity left. They actually named streets. This is completely like off topic, or like we're veering off to an exit ramp, but they named streets after the leader of the nationalist militia that slaughtered most of the people in a pogrom in the town that part of my family comes from. His name is Simon Petlura.
And you, for some reason, don't want your tax dollars going towards arming those same people who, that's definitely self-hating.
Zionism comes in and you stop thinking about that. And you're like, well, the Azov battalion supports Israel or something. So it's good.
Yeah.
But I mean, we talked about how there's killing continuing in Gaza, and a lot of people who followed the genocide, maybe it was exhausting after 2 years, and you want to move on. Journalists are still being killed in Gaza. 3 of them were just killed in an Israeli drone strike. And the justification by Israel was they were flying a drone, and they say it was a Hamas drone, but actually it was a camera drone to get drone footage of a festival which was being held in Gaza by an Egyptian humanitarian organization. And here is how CBS's Tony DeCouple, who was hired by Barry Weiss because of his pro-Israel credentials, here's how he reported on the cameraman, the Gaza-based cameraman for CBS, being murdered by Israel.
Turning to one of the deadliest days in Gaza since October's ceasefire between Hamas and Israel, an Israeli airstrike today killed 3 journalists. Israel said it was targeting a group operating a drone affiliated with Hamas. One of those journalists, Abed Sha'at, has worked for CBS as a photographer. His colleagues described the 30-year-old as a brave person doing dangerous work. He was married just 2 weeks ago. Turning to one of the deadliest days in Gaza, seeing a drone affiliated with Hamas.
So did Tony DeCouple just accuse his own reporter of being a Hamas fighter? That's what it sounded like. So CBS is saying that their reporters fight for Hamas?
And amazingly, so I mean, yes, he is, because he's giving the Israeli narrative. He's not even saying what they were actually doing, which is covering a humanitarian mission. Like, at least if you're going to be like, if you want to pretend to be balanced, at least you would say what what like the other side of it is. He only gives the Israeli side, which is that they were involved in a drone attack. So yeah, he is accusing his own slain colleague of being a militant, and he's doing Israeli propaganda. And it's like CBS News, where even if you work with CBS News, if Israel wants to kill you, you'll be sold out, and Israel will justify your murder. And people have like made jokes that like if CBS News accused Barry Weiss or this guy, whatever his name is, of being in Hamas, that they find a way to like parrot the Israeli line too. That's how devoted they are to Israel.
I've never seen a network sell out its reporter harder. I've been sold out by several news outlets, but never like that.
No.
But that's what you get if you're, I mean, that's not what you get, but that's what happens if you're Palestinian or Muslim or Arab and you're working for the supremacist regime of Barry Weiss, who got our friend Rifat Al-Arir killed.
Yeah. And if you're going to report on the story about journalists being murdered, you might, there's something called context. Like generally when you're delivering the news, you provide people with like the basic info. And you also might mention that something like 260 journalists, at least, Palestinian journalists have been killed by Israel since October 7th. So a toll that just keeps growing every single month. You might want to mention that as well, but of course he doesn't. Instead, he's willing to parrot the Israeli lie that these slain journalists were militants. I agree. I've never seen a journalist sold out to this degree before. I mean, Reuters did this actually with one of their cameramen who were killed by Israel. Reuters also repeated some Israeli lie about him. So CBS News is following in that tradition. But it just shows that like the only loyalty in journalism when it comes to Israel-Palestine is to Israel. It's not even to these outlets' own colleagues and staffers who risk their lives to give people the news.
It's shocking. But this is the point of CBS News under Barry Weiss, is to not just advance Israeli propaganda, but also to launder propaganda. It was CBS that first reported the 16,500 Iranian peaceful protesters killed by the mullahs based on quote unquote sources. It was CBS that tried to launder the lie that Renee Good, the woman who was shot in the face in Minneapolis, had badly injured the ICE agent, claiming that he had internal bleeding. This has actually been contradicted even by DHS. They just use the banner of CBS and its reputation as a legacy media organization to launder propaganda for Trump, Israel, whatever entity it is. And that's why Barry Weiss is there. And she will zealously advance that agenda, even as she, as her, I mean, it seems like her reign is unraveling very quickly, but she's very valuable to some powerful forces. I think we should move to Davos, just because we could probably talk about any of these topics forever.
Can I briefly just give an update on a breaking story that speaks to, the lengths that Zionists will go to cover up for Israeli crimes and harass people who challenge them? This just happened in Montreal. This is a friend of mine, Yves Engler, who has just been found guilty of harassing a police detective. Okay, this has happened today. Yves Engler found guilty of harassment over a mass email campaign directed at detective. So this is what happened. I'll just summarize this very briefly. Yves, about a year ago, was arrested and spent 3 days in a Montreal jail because a Zionist influencer online, claimed that he was harassing her when all he did was basically accuse her of supporting genocide on Twitter. This is all public. Like, he accused her of being a genocide supporter. So she got him arrested and he spent 3 days in jail. Okay. After he got out, there was a campaign to get those charges dropped against him. So Yves encouraged people, and his supporters encouraged people, to email the Montreal police and saying, drop these charges against Yves Engler. So then he was not only facing the initial charges of harassing the Zionist for saying you're a genocide supporter, he faced charges of harassing the police for encouraging a campaign to get the charges dropped. And this is what he's just been found guilty of. harassing a police officer for asking the police politely to not charge him for free speech and calling someone a genocide supporter. So that just happened in Montreal.
And yeah, that happened. Mamadou Tal, a student who is a green card holder in the U.S. who was deported because of his support for Palestine, has just been detained by counter-terror police in the UK and had his devices seized. And then Ayoub Lovely, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this account. He was visited by British police, and it looks like he was brutally beaten.
Jeez.
This is, the Commonwealth. And what for? He said that a few days ago, a registered British charity whose objective is to advance the Jewish religion sent him a phishing email. It was from support@batbells.org, which linked to this charity. They were trying to phish him and steal information in his email, posing as X support. And then he called that out. And he gets a false call of police coming to his house and arresting him because a quote unquote neighbor overheard him, quote, threatening to murder his mother. They stripped him naked, beat him to a pulp, denied him medication, and he has a court date in 2 weeks. And his lawyers are telling him to plead guilty. So I don't know what the hell is going on there, but this is consistent. There's 2 NHS doctors who've been detained for their views on Palestine, one 4 times.
Yeah.
And now Eve Engler in the Commonwealth country of Canada is being found guilty of harassing police in a case where he accused an openly genocidal Zionist activist of genocide, of supporting genocide, right?
Yep, that's just what he did.
And they're just trying to shut him down because he humiliates all of these public figures all the time.
Yeah. And also, speaking of the Commonwealth, there was the case in Australia where a Zionist got butt dialed by accident. This is an actual case. And they thought that they heard on the voicemail that was left after this butt dial some gunshots, which of course they didn't. And they felt traumatized by that because of the Bondi Beach massacre. So somehow the person who committed the pocket dial was now being charged because the Zionist. So it just keeps getting more.
That was the craziest thing I've ever
yeah.
seen out of all of these stories. And it speaks to the paranoia of that quote unquote community in Australia that's trying to shut down free speech after a Bondi Beach massacre by an ISIS supporter who had nothing to do with Palestine. And this is Miami Beach. Someone gets visited by the police.
Is that your account?
They got visited by the police for criticizing Miami Beach mayor, arch-Zionist Stephen Miner, in a Facebook comment. So it's coming. The UK is coming our way.
Talking to the right person, we want to go see who the right person is.
Okay, how can I help you?
So pretty much it's just a statement that was made as far as,
verbatim, it says the guy who consistently calls for the death of all Palestinians tried to shut down a theater for showing a movie.
The guy, because she said you consistently call for the death of all Palestinians. That's now an offense that gets you visited by the police in Miami Beach. We're all living under the board of peace. Okay, on to Davos. The World Economic Forum convened at Davos, Switzerland this week, the gathering place of the transatlantic 1%, without any Iranian representatives allowed to appear. However, Israeli genocidal officials were allowed to appear, as was Jared Kushner, to present his plan for biometric concentration camps, the master plan of Gaza, as was Ahmed al-Shara, the former co-founder of ISIS and founder of Al Qaeda in Syria, who is now Syria's president, who was greeted in the White House with Trump cologne sprayed on him by the US president and is now on a rampage in northeastern Syria. All of these figures were there at Davos. And the anger and rancor that defined this meeting boiled down to Donald Trump's his announced plan to take over an iceberg called Greenland, which belongs to Denmark, as part of the Don Roe doctrine to completely control the Western Hemisphere. The Europeans are now up in arms, and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney delivered probably the most memorable speech at Davos, declaring essentially that Trump has now proven, with his plan to take over Greenland and his insults of the European leaders standing in his way, that the rules-based order was always a fraud.
We understand that this rupture calls for more than adaptation. It calls for honesty about the world as it is. We are taking the sign out of the window. We know the old order is not coming back. We shouldn't mourn it. Nostalgia is not a strategy. But we believe that from the fracture, we can build something bigger, better, stronger, more just. This is the task of the middle powers. The countries that have the most to lose from a world of fortresses and the most to gain from genuine cooperation. The powerful have their power. But we have something too. The capacity to stop pretending, to name reality, to build our strength at home, and to act together. That is Canada's path. We choose it openly and confidently, and it is a path wide open to any country willing to take it with us. Thank you very much.
So what prompted him to renounce the so-called rules-based international order? It's Trump trying to steal Greenland. It wasn't Gaza, which Mark Carney and his government supported. So that's what has caused him to be so upset with the global order, right? Like I'm not missing anything here. Like that's what this is.
When did he speak out before? I mean, when did he speak out about Gaza being a calamitous violation of the rules-based order?
Yeah.
No. Why was this the moment? Mark Carney's Canada supplied Israel with a de facto air bridge of tech and weapons to assist it in its genocide against Gaza. Mark Carney, who is a former governor at the Bank of England, which participated in the theft of $20 billion of gold from Venezuela, supported the kidnapping, or failed to speak up against the U.S. kidnapping of a head of state, Nicolas Maduro, paving the way for Trump to do it again, or for any powerful country to kidnap a head of state. Where were the Europeans? They supported it. The Europeans supported Israel's genocide. The Europeans cracked down on their own citizens for opposing it. Where are the Europeans? They supported every coup in Haiti. Canada supported the coup against Aristide in Haiti. I mean, you can talk about Canada as much as I can. It's your home and native land. When did they stand up against any of these violations of the rules-based order? But Mark Carney's now saying, we went along with it because we benefited from it.
Yeah.
And now they're going after white people. We can't allow that. We can't allow them to take on our European allies. They're coming after us. So they were totally selfish before, and they're selfish now. They stand for nothing. And that was the message out of Davos.
Remember, they gave a Nazi war criminal a standing ovation in Parliament a few years ago, Nazi Gate, when they were also welcoming Zelensky. But finally, Trump taking Greenland, or trying to take Greenland, is a bridge too far. And but really, Trump trying to take Greenland is the culmination of Europe totally subordinating itself to daddy, as Mark Rutte calls Trump. So they all went on board with the proxy war in Ukraine. They all weaned themselves off of Russian energy, which had powered so much of Europe, especially Germany, which is the economic engine of Europe. And the U.S. rewards them by basically humiliating them, calling them weak, and Trump trying to push through the forced theft of Greenland. And they're talking about now about reaching some sort of compromise, but I think Trump will get it. I think Trump will ultimately get what he wants. And Europe brought this on themselves by totally subordinating themselves to the U.S. Long before Trump came along.
That's such a great point. This really, I mean, you could really go back to Euromaidan. It was called Euromaidan in 2014 because the EU was driving this. And along with Victoria Nuland. But remember what Victoria Nuland said in her notorious phone call, F the EU.
Exactly. Yeah.
What was she saying? F the EU. They won't get cheap gas anymore. They won't have one of their top resource trading partners they'll be completely cut off from Russia, but F the EU. So the EU doesn't have anywhere else to turn but to daddy, the United States, as daddy takes them out to the woodshed and smacks them over the buttocks with a rusty shovel. I mean, Trump just went there and humiliated them, and they have nowhere else to turn because they can't consolidate as a region and be independent. The whole point of the EU, that's the whole point of the EU, is to neuter European sovereignty.
Just from an energy perspective, they're just such chumps. Like they cut off the Nord Stream pipelines. And
they didn't cut it off. They allowed, according to the official story, they allowed Ukraine to bomb their own critical infrastructure. And then we're like, come on and welcome Zelensky. We love you.
But then they still need the energy. So they are still getting some Russian energy, but just now via third parties, which then leads them to pay more of a markup to get it from somebody else. So not getting it directly from Russia, all it means is they still get some of the same energy, although far less of it, but now at a higher price. And then meanwhile, to compensate for the Russian gas that they're not getting, now they buy LNG from the US, which is so much more expensive. So they've bankrupted themselves, made themselves even more dependent on the US, tried to suck up to Trump by calling him daddy, as Mark Rutte did. And then daddy comes in and steals their land and calls them weak. So, I mean, I've never seen more of an own goal in geopolitical history, at least that I can think of in recent memory, than what the Europeans have done to themselves. And by the way, Nuland not only, said F the EU when she was helping to organize the Ukraine coup, after the Ukraine coup, and then Europe tried to show some independence with the Minsk Accords, with France and Germany taking the lead and trying to broker an end to the war that began because they went along with the Maidan coup. Then Nuland met on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference. This is in early 2015. And she met with people like Mike Pompeo and John McCain. And they all had a meeting, and they all basically decided that they were going to stop the Minsk Accords. And that's also exactly what has happened with Europe's acquiescence. And so here we are. Here we are today.
Here we are. Head EU Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen. Territorial integrity and sovereignty are fundamental principles of international law. They're essential for Europe and the international community as a whole. We have a shared transatlantic interest in peace and security in the Arctic, including through NATO. And she denounces tariffs. Europe will remain united, coordinated, and committing to upholding its sovereignty. Sorry, you were never upholding your sovereignty, as we've explained. And you never supported territorial integrity and sovereignty for other countries under international law. Look at what you've been saying about Iran. Look at what she did not protest Nicolas Maduro's kidnapping whatsoever. She fully supported Israel in Gaza.
Yeah.
I mean, the hypocrisy is off the charts. And then here's Emmanuel Macron from France at Davos with some very tough words to Donald Trump. Ugh. He's lecturing Trump.
But we do prefer respect to bullies. We do prefer science to plotism. And we do prefer rule of law to brutality. We have a place where rule of law and predictability is still the rule of the game. And my guess is that it is largely underpriced by the market. Having a place like Europe, which sometimes is too slow, for sure, and needs to be reformed, for sure, but which is predictable, loyal, and where you know that the rule of the game is just the rule of law, it's a good place. And
sorry, what's up with the sunglasses? Like for people,
I don't know. I mean, there was video of Macron getting off a flight, and his wife just like stole him in the face. She just blocked him, and then he comes out like, "Hello, everybody," and like a battered spouse. And according to the conspiracy theory, his wife is actually his husband, who is his father, who is actually his father. So daddy hit Macron. Okay, according to the conspiracy theory.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I mean, I'm just going,
No, I
don't know if you watched Candace Owens' like 10-part series, but
I missed
a lot
it,
of people were convinced by that.
Oh, I know. I know.
Where is Jean Michel? Where is John Michael?
So for people who are just listening and not watching, Macron is wearing aviator sunglasses, but actually his doctors say he has a medical condition. So I'm sorry to mock that, but it's a little jarring. It's a little strange to see.
It's like that scene in Chinatown where Jack Nicholson's slapping Faye Dunaway around, but like it's Macron, and he's like, "She's my wife. She is mon frère. She is mon père. She is mon père et mon frère et mon wife."
Poor Macron. All right.
I almost feel sorry for him.
Now I feel sorry for the guy. Yeah.
It's the first time
Yeah. But anyway, what is he saying?
We do whatever you want, Donald Trump. We are reliable, predictable. We did not do Libya. We did not steal the gold of Libya because we believe in the rules-based order. I am not a Rothschild career banker who has stolen everything from the Sahel. The people of Africa, they love us because we are predictable. We are polite, and we are your perfect partners.
Well, amazingly, Libya is a great example of how, like Macron's talking about how trustworthy we are and we're dependable. Libya is a great example of how it's the exact opposite, where Sarkozy, with the former president of France, and you can correct me if I'm getting some details wrong, he basically got rich in part off of Libya and then sold it out in part because he was worried about being exposed. And that's why he was actually supporting the overthrow and then murder of Gaddafi, if I'm remembering it correctly.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Yep.
So, like what Macron's saying there about we're not corrupt or we're so dependable, Libya is a great example.
It's like silence him.
Yeah.
He's now a bad guy.
Yeah.
Also, the Qataris, I think, were paying him through PSG in Paris, which they own.
There we go.
But that was a factor. But now Macron is lecturing Trump on the rule of law. I mean, Libya was really a French operation. And Macron, now he's being positioned as this is the European propaganda. Like, this is how they're going to try to take on Trump. Testosterone is the primary. This is the British UK Telegraph. Testosterone is the primary currency in Davos this year. And the French president's aviators have placed him at the top of the pecking order.
Oh, God. Imagine, I'm assuming that this is written by a guy. Like, imagine being a guy in public.
His name is Guy Kelly.
There we go, Guy Kelly. So there we go. Can Macron's sunglasses save the West? I mean, what are you saying there about yourself? How insecure you are if you're putting this stuff out there? I mean, this reminds me of when Robert Mueller was like worshipped as this like patrician, waspy savior figure because of his Brooks Brothers suits. I mean, there's this weird worship of like waspy white guys by other waspy white guys, and a real lack of confidence in their own masculinity here to be putting stuff out there. I mean, what is the testosterone is the primary currency, and what is he talking about? What is he? It's so embarrassing.
Well, if you believe the conspiracy theory, Macron's father, who's actually his wife, is at the top of the pecking order.
Candace is right.
Is true.
Candace is right. Candace tried to warn us.
I mean, that's just a substitute for substance. like it's a facade, as though he's intentionally wearing aviator sunglasses to send a message to Trump that he's the man. And there's no substance. France, the UK, Germany, they can't pay for NATO. They can't put up a standing army to fight Russia. NATO is the US. And that's why they can't resist what Trump is doing in Greenland. Trump has been talking about this since 2019, and he wouldn't have been doing it if he didn't think he could get what he wanted. And they're only taking him seriously now. And I don't see how they can retaliate. And it also really threatens NATO, which has essentially been functioned, especially since the collapse of the socialist bloc. It's functioned sort of like the revival of it's like the Fourth Reich.
We've covered that report before from Rand Corporation, which is tied to the Pentagon, about like extending, overextending and destabilizing Russia. And, one of the key conclusions was that we should increase weapons to Ukraine because that will draw Russia in, have a war, and that will bleed Russia. But there's also a section there about one of the other key things to do is to take out the Nord Stream pipeline. And it also points out in the process, in doing that, that will make Europe more dependent on the US. So really, the plot about destabilizing and weakening Russia is also a plot to destabilize and weaken Europe. And the difference is Russia pushed back against it. The rest of Europe went along with it.
Yeah. Right. Sorry, I'm just addressing something. So, excellent point. And here's Trump at Davos. I think we should hear from Trump because this is, he spoke for an hour and 15 minutes and made these comments about NATO, which I think are some of the most important comments, in a very kind of glowering, insulting, menacing, in many cases, juvenile speech, rubbing the Europeans' faces in their own weakness.
Piece of ice, cold and poorly located, that can play a vital role in world peace and world protection. It's a very small ask compared to what we have given them for many, many decades. But the problem with NATO is that we'll be there for them 100%. But I'm not sure that they'd be there for us. If we gave them the call, gentlemen, we are being attacked. We're under attack by such and such a nation. I know them all very well. I'm not sure that they'd be there. I know we'd be there for them. I don't know that they'd be there for us. So, piece of ice.
Piece of ice. Greenland's just a piece of ice. But he's saying, NATO isn't real. It's not actually an alliance. It's just the U.S. running around, basically providing a protective umbrella for these ungrateful welfare queens in Europe. That's basically what he's saying. And I'll be honest, like, more, please. Can we have more? Like, I've wanted for years to see NATO broken up because it serves no other purpose other than to make war. It's pivoting to Asia to contain China and threaten China. That's not the North Atlantic. It has partner organizations in South America to threaten any independent nation there. It destroyed Libya. It was used in Afghanistan. It's essentially just a global war machine. And the NATOification of Ukraine was the trigger for Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which has left hundreds of thousands dead. So what good does this organization serve? But from Trump's point of view, it's just a waste of money. And they won't save the U.S. when the U.S. comes under attack from, I don't know who he thinks is going to attack the U.S.
And Trump also got all these NATO states to spend even more money on the military-industrial complex.
Yep.
Right, which we can also thank Russiagate for, because Russiagate instilled in liberals this fear that Trump was going to dismantle NATO, and meanwhile Trump was actually trying to pressure NATO members to spend more in the military. That was his big focus. And there was even some measure that all the Democrats voted for, advancing sanctions on Russia that insisted that NATO that there's no way that NATO members spend less than their pledge of a certain percentage of GDP, and all the Squad members voted for that. So the Squad members voted along with a call to demand that to make sure that NATO members spend enough money on the military-industrial complex, which of course means they have less money to spend on the social welfare programs that progressives are supposed to care about normally. So Trump got all these states to spend more on the military-industrial complex, and he rewards them by calling them weak and cowardly. And that's been the main achievement. That's been one of the achievements of the Russiagate era. Fearmonger about Russia to get people to spend more in the military. And then Trump he still sells out his own vassals anyway. It's extraordinary.
Well, yeah, Denmark, being the country sold out the hardest, Denmark participated aggressively in the so-called war on terror, lost soldiers. Denmark was involved in many of these theaters of post 9/11 U.S. empire, and this is how they get repaid. So Gavin Newsom, who is kind of aptly described as Patrick Bateman by Scott Bessent, another sociopathic figure, was present in Davos. And the message he's sending just by sitting there is, just wait. When I get in, everything will be fine, Europe, and we'll go back to the good old days of Obama at Brandenburg Gate, when you'll get everything you want, and all of our differences will be carried out in private. That's Europe's strategy, because it has no strategy to stop Trump. And if J.D. Vance or someone like that is elected, Europe has no other option. They're giving themselves no other option except to depend on daddy US electing a Democrat. And maybe the Democrat won't want to give back Greenland. Why would they? Oh, we're just going to give you US territory after we took it and, we're able to mine rare earth minerals. Like who's to say a Democrat would give Greenland back if Trump manages to seize it? So this is Europe's last chance. I think they have a last chance with Putin. And I think they're too ideologically extreme to end the war, make peace with Putin, who is a European leader. Because after Putin, I think Putin is the moderate center of Russian leadership at this point, and he's holding back more extreme figures.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think they have a last chance with Putin to still be a continent.
And speaking of last chance with Putin, one of Trump's reasons for wanting to take Greenland is to counter what he says is the threat from Russia. Well, meanwhile, what is the actual threat when it comes to Russia? Well, in a couple of weeks, the last nuclear arms control treaty between the U.S. and Russia, New START, is supposed to expire. And once it expires, there are no more caps on the arsenals of the U.S. and Russia, which means a new nuclear arms race. It's just over 2 weeks away. And no one's talking about this. And Trump says we have to take Greenland to counter the threat from Russia. Well, another way to counter threats from Russia is to have arms control with Russia, which Russia has offered. Russia has offered to extend New START by 1 year. And Trump initially said, yeah, I think we can do that. But since then, he started saying, well, you know what? If it expires, we'll just negotiate a brand new treaty. Well, that's not how it works, because these new treaties take a long time to negotiate. And once there's no more treaty in effect, then both countries are incentivized to build their stockpiles, especially if Trump has his way of spending even more money on the Pentagon. And so this is happening, and yet no one's talking about it because diplomacy with Russia has been so criminalized. And this is one of the biggest threats we face, but yet no one's talking about it because it's now considered normal to not do diplomacy with Russia.
Absolutely. It's effectively criminalized. Well, it was. And it's now stalled under Trump, who's just announced secondary sanctions on Russia through Treasury OFAC. I have a hard stop in about 5 minutes, so we should try to blow through the Syria segment.
Okay.
This appears to be a contemporary video from this week. Many people tried to claim, especially supporters of Ahmed al-Sharaa, the Syrian rebranded al-Qaeda president, that it was old. This was this week in Raqqa, northeastern Syria. I feel like I'll get demonetized if I play an ISIS nasheed, but We oppose ISIS. We are anti. We're anti-ISIS. Just YouTube censors. Don't get any ideas here.
One of the few leftist channels when it comes to Syria who are actually, critical of ISIS. And
yeah, unlike The Intercept and Democracy Now, we're willing to. Opposing that is using war on terror rhetoric, according to the Trotskyist left.
Right.
No, this is this was this week, and this was all thanks to Tom Barak, another billionaire real estate guy who has been given an envoy position by Donald Trump. And this is what Tom Barak has to say. The greatest opportunity for the Kurds in Syria right now lies in the post-Assad transition under the new government led by President Ahmed al-Shara. It offers a pathway to full integration into a new unified Syrian state with citizenship rights, cultural protections, and political participation denied under Assad, where Kurds face statelessness.
It's exactly what Assad offered them. It's exactly what Assad, but the U.S. blocked it. Anyway, sorry.
So yes, the U.S. blocked it. Assad offered them that. I'm going to ask you about that in a second, but I'm just trying to summarize. Tom Barak is imposing federalization on all the minorities of Syria in order to consolidate the rule of Ahmed al-Shara, because he has bowed before the U.S. and has effectively allowed Israel to take the Golan. He's weak. The Kurds are now suffering a rampage from al-Shara's forces, who are a collection of bandits, many of them from abroad, including Egyptian jihadists who are wanted in Egypt. Kurdish female fighters have been have had their throats slashed, have had their hair cut off, like effectively scalped, are being massacred, and ISIS prisoners are being let out by the thousands in northeast Syria. Aaron, why was northeast Syria off limits to the Assad government of Syria, and why is it now being federalized?
Well, the U.S. was occupying it to steal Syria's oil and wheat to weaken the state enough so that the U.S. could have regime change, overthrow Assad, which they finally achieved. And during this period, they were using the Kurds to help keep Syria fragmented, and they were blocking essentially a deal between the Kurds and the Syrian government because they did not want to see a unified Syria. They wanted to keep it fragmented, and they kept telling the Kurds, like, don't make a deal with Assad, you'll be denied your rights, hold out for something better. And now that the U.S.'s only real goal has been achieved, which is overthrowing Assad, now they turn around and tell the Kurds, you must make a deal with the new government, and in the process, they're letting the new government's forces massacre the Kurds. And we've seen footage circulate on social media of gruesome atrocities committed against the Kurds. So this is the U.S. selling out another ally, because that ally was only supported because it served geopolitical goals. In this case, U.S.-Israeli hegemony by overthrowing a disobedient state in the form of the Assad government.
Very well put. We warned after regime change, black flags would be flying over cities across Syria, and our detractors, who called us Assadists and tried to basically destroy us, would either say that we were crazy conspiracy theorists, or maybe they just welcomed that. But that's what's happening right now. And that is why Russia, Iran's IRGC, and Hezbollah intervened in Syria. It was to prevent that from happening. You either, and now Iran wanted to prevent it from happening because it would be, as Qasem Soleimani said in his life, it would be inside Iran if they didn't prevent it from arising on Iran's doorstep. And Syria is Iran's doorstep. So now it's happening. Everything we predicted is coming true. The government in Damascus does not respect minority rights. It sees and its fighters, especially the foreign jihadists, see Alawites, Druze, Kurds, they basically see them as satanic.
And in the process, a number of ISIS prisoners who were being held in Kurdish-controlled areas, they've been released.
Yes.
And it's unclear by who. I mean, but the bottom line is the chaos that's been caused by the U.S. selling out the Kurds and letting the new government attack them has led to the release of these ISIS prisoners. And what's going to happen now? I mean, when these are heavily. This is a really volatile situation. Yes, very indoctrinated, and now they're free to run wild, and the people will pay the price.
So the U.S. CENTCOM announced that it fears a breakout of these prisoners, and so that would pose a threat to the U.S. directly. And so they are transferring 7,000 ISIS detainees from Syria to Iraqi-controlled facilities. So they're moving ISIS fighters closer to the Iranian border. Just in closing, so they're saying they don't trust Jolani, aka al-Shara, and the Syrian government with these ISIS detainees anymore. But Syrian minorities who are not Sunni must trust them with their lives. And they're moving them closer to Iran. And we all know ISIS was moved around to threaten any geopolitical foe the U.S. wanted to threaten. John Kerry admitted that in leaked recordings. That's essentially the thesis of my book, The Management of Savagery, which explains this whole project. And now it's happening again at a time when the U.S. is potentially moving towards regional war on Iran.
During the so-called U.S.-led campaign against ISIS under the Obama administration, the U.S. military watched as ISIS crossed through the desert and took Raqqa. They watched it happen. They let it happen because they wanted to use ISIS to weaken the Assad government. And it's the same playbook now being repeated, except now it's the Kurds who have to pay the price of the U.S. Desire for hegemony. And the reason they stand behind Damascus is because they have someone willing to do their bidding. But there are people like Lindsey Graham who's now he's now voicing outrage at the Kurds being abandoned.
Because he speaks on behalf of Israel, and Israel is actually not very comfortable with what's happening in Syria and wants to keep the pressure on.
It's such a mess. It's such a mess.
It's a mess, but it's actually not that complex if you just focus on the basics and where the U.S. aligns here. And it was spelled out very clearly on a Newsweek cover, 2019. If Iran falls, ISIS rises again. It's just that simple. And look at the ISIS-like attacks that took place inside Iran on January 8th and 9th. Look at what's happening in northeast Syria. After the Syrian army under Assad and Russia were pushed out of that area, the U.S. used SDF as a card to hold it, the Kurds, and now the Kurds are removed and ISIS is rising again. And then they're moving ISIS fighters into Iraq, which is a majority Shia country. It's all very clear. And it's a mess, but you don't have to be confused about it.
When is that cover from Newsweek?
2019, and it was by one of the last good national security reporters for Newsweek or any other publication in the mainstream, Tom O'Connor.
Well, that's another example of how we've regressed. There's no way that could be published now. Absolutely no way. Just as our friend Alexander Coburn and his wife, Leslie, they made documentaries in the 80s on PBS. There's no way you could air now about the Israeli military arming death squads in Central America, the CIA protecting drug runners. You just couldn't do that anymore. It just as you couldn't in any major U.S. outlet publish what was just published in 2019, and that's all because of Israel First. As we continue to slip further,
not entirely, but yeah.
It's
State Department propaganda.
Sure. Yeah.
But a journalistic powerhouse like yourself couldn't be on Democracy Now! Today.
That's also true.
But I digress. I'm going over time for my own schedule because you all matter so much to us, and I hope you all learned something today. Really appreciate everyone being here with us. Subscribe to the Grayzone on YouTube, on Substack. Get all of our reporting in your inbox for free, or contribute as you see fit. There's a support button on our Substack site and at thegrayzone.com, where you can also find our original investigative reporting. So thanks again, Aaron, for your excellent insights today, and we will see you all soon. Peace.
Peace.